What is up, y'all? This is a breakdown for Zwift Racing League Season 2, Race 1. This is a points-based race, team points scratch race. We're on the Richmond course, running the reverse direction, which means that basically as soon as we get out of the gate here, we're going to be right into the action. Here is the profile, and you can see we've only got a few feet of flat before we're going down. I watched a couple other people's streams so I would know beforehand what the danger points were going to be, and I pretty much decided that this start was going to be really crucial. I was just going to start this like a cyclocross race.
It's very important to make a sensible start.
Watching streams from other people earlier in the day, I had seen this start go ballistic and seen some really strong guys get caught out, so I also timed the effort. I knew this was going to be about 25-30 seconds from here. You notice that it's not actually counting up until we get fully out of the pin here. The time's not counting up, but still about 25 or 30 seconds. And I wanted to come into that first downhill in pretty good position and know that I could back off a little bit there, because from there we're pretty much going right into the first point sprint effort. And that's another spot where, again, I want to go all in and not get caught out. I saw a couple guys in streams earlier on in the day, maybe reacting rather than being proactive to the start of that point sprint, not really starting until the segment proper started. I knew that coming into this first downhill with good speed and good position would allow me to do some amount of super tucking. I put in a few pedal strokes here to stay up to speed, but did a lot of this at 0 watts and was able to get my heart rate down a little bit and get settled before this first points preem, which is 23rd Street Reverse. 23rd Street Reverse has a very steep section to it, but there's actually a pretty long drag beforehand where it starts at 1% for a while and goes up to 2%. And I think that's the section where a lot of people were not quite on the pedals yet, and they were getting caught out in other races. That's what I was seeing anyway. So that was why I wanted to get off the pedals and do some super tucking on that first descent so that I could just fully commit to this effort. I knew it would be about a minute and a half to 2 minutes from the time we hit the uphill until the line. So I really wanted to go full commit that whole time. And when I say full commit, what I mean is that once we hit that section and I start going hard, I want to basically commit to the effort for that duration, almost regardless of what everyone else around me is doing. And if that means that I take the first point sprint, great. And if that means that if I'm 25th, then that's probably about as well as I could have done, because what I'm going to do is basically just do the power that I know I'm capable of for that duration. So here we go. I'm standing up. This is full commit. And basically like the low end of the spectrum of what I'm going to hold here is 450, and then the really, really upper end being about 600. And I'm going to try to stay toward the lower end on the lesser slopes and then ramp it up on the steep stuff. You can see here on the 11th percent, I'm going up about 100 watts, and right at the moment my mind starts to fade a little bit here, I start moving forward through the group a little bit and pick up several spots, and all of a sudden I'm sort of in striking distance for the points as we round the corner here and it flattens out. So points are going 10 deep, and I realize that, and that there's the banner, so I'm running on fumes here, but this is all heart to get past a couple more guys, grab a couple more points on this first line. I also know that I'm going to get some respite on the downhill here. This is a pretty steep one, and you can hear me start to freewheel. The reason I flipped the camera around is I want to make sure when I start this super tuck that I'm not sort of the last guy and ending up in no man's land. But these two guys are with me, so I feel pretty good about the fact that we're going to coalesce, and I'm going to go pretty easy right here until we round the corner, and then once again, full gas another time. There are no points on this hill or on the line at the top of this hill or on this segment that we just started. The little red and green dots on the road denote the beginning of a segment. But I did know that this was going to be the crucial point where the front group was going to form. Like, whoever makes it over this climb and is on at the bottom was pretty much going to be the front group.
Now it's really important to be up front among the leaders before the field breaks up.
You know, there's no points on offer here, so I really just need to stay with this group. I don't need to be driving this group. And I'm also hearing teammates on Discord breathing super heavily, and I don't want to be the one pushing the pace and dropping them. I'm not super worried about these couple of guys sort of trickling off the front here because it looks like I'm with the larger group. So 2 guys are not going to go and solo away from the group that's forming behind here, at least not from, this far out, beginning of the first lap. So my main concern here is getting up to speed so that I can actually get off the pedals and catch a pretty solid super tuck on the downhill here. Once again, steep downhill. I saw some other people making this mistake in other races, and I'm not quite up to speed, but there we go. There's 56, and I get down in the tuck, and I'm with these guys. I just want to make sure I don't fall off the back. There's a little uphill, so I knew to pedal 3 or 4 strokes right there, and then once again back off, get back off the power and get some respite, some rest. Start to take stock of who's in the group, how many teammates we've got, what the real race situation is on the road right here. This is the first section where we have sort of a lengthy distance between steep hills or sprint points or anything crucial, so I can kind of start thinking about what's going on. Look behind me and see there is a group rolling up from behind. My teammate Matt is in that group, and I know they're going to make the junction. Matt was recording his race as well, so I might drop a little bit of that footage in here. He had some interesting notes about that first bit. Here he is making the group.
Front group, baby.
I'm giving a little bit of encouragement there on Discord to our guys that just made the junction with that second group. Matt's interesting takeaway was that this was almost split down just to that 13 riders. The only way that second group made it back on is that several of them had arrow power-ups from one of those early sprint banners that they actually burned on that descent, and with several of them hitting the arrow power up at the same time and then all drafting off of each other, they were able to close that gap down. But we were very, very close to being down to a 13-rider race, which this early 5 minutes in would have been really interesting. So the racing has been full gas for that first 5 minutes, and so has the commentary. I haven't had a second to talk about who's here, what the format is, what's changed this season. So I'm going to get into all that right now. So Restart Racing has 3 teams racing A for this season of Zwift Racing League. This one is in AMEA. Then we've got another team in EMEA. And then our team from EMEA last season got promoted to Premier League. We won the playoffs, or I guess we're high enough up in the playoffs that we got promoted. So that's been awesome to watch them in that race.
And then Restart Racing. Well, what a start from them.
So there are 2 major things I like about the ZRL. The first one is the fact that it's team-based, points-based racing, and I'll drill down on the things that I think are really working about that and what's changed for this season here in a second. The other thing I really like about racing the ZRL is the super high field quality across all these community leagues. So in this front group right now, we've got Ted King, former World Tour pro, used to race for the Cannondale Slipstream squad back when Sagan was on that team, transitioned to gravel racing once he was done with the World Tour, and maybe best known at this point for winning the race formerly known as Dirty Kanza a couple times, like 2016 and 2018, something like that. And then on his team, so he's racing for Velocio. I think that's a new esports team supported by the Velocio clothing brand. That's also a real life sponsor of his. He's also got Kevin Bouchard-Hall on that team, who KBH, also former pro, raced for Kelly Benefit Strategies back in the mid 2000s, and maybe he's better known at this point for being like a top Zwift racer. I think part of his legend is that he's been number 1 on Zwift Power a couple of times. Super strong dude and really savvy, really knows Zwift, and the rest of their team is pretty much filled out with other guys of that quality. I think 5 of the 6 of them have made this front group. And then another random outlier we've got here is the professional hockey player Andrew Ference, who won a Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins back in 2011, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but yeah, so this front group is not just like a bunch of randos on Zwift. This is a really high caliber, high quality field, and this is good hard racing. KBH was also streaming this race live and was nice enough to let me snip some of his perspective and splice it in here. So I'm actually going to kick it over to the KBH cam because he did a pretty good job explaining to his team on Discord where we're at points wise after that first preem on the hill.
So first one was first across the line 10 deep for points. And then also fastest segment The guy who got second in the sprint had the fast segment. A lot of points for the segment. So, winning it, it's not as good as getting the fastest segment. So, I won the battle, not the war.
So the front group is kind of sorted out, and it's becoming apparent that it's going to be Restart versus Velocio for the team points on the day. And ZRL is all about the team points format, which I really like. So these races, or this one today has 3 points preems, and then there are also points at the finish. It makes it so that we're not just riding around at sort of a tempo pace and then sprinting at the end, but it's tactical throughout. Who's going for the preems, who's countering after we go for the preems, where people are getting dropped. So this course, there's the 1 points preem we've already been through at the top of the 23rd Street climb, and then there is one after we get to the top of this slightly more shallow climb, this 5%er. There's a left-hand turn and then a sort of flat sprint out of that, and then there's a completely flat sprint about a K out from the line. We're doing 2 laps though, so this is not the end of the race. So last season, all of these intermediate sprint points, the points only went 3 deep, and then I believe it was a maximum of like 3 or 5 points on the line for each one. This season, the points go 10 deep, and there are 10 points on the line for first. So it makes it a lot more worth it to go for those points. And last season, it was causing splits when people would go for the preems, but it wasn't really making as big of a dent because the points on the finish were so much higher. This season, you can really rack up a lot of points going for the preems. So my strategy for these preems, especially early on in the race, was to be up here in the conversation, but definitely not burning significant matches. We'll see how that's a little bit different from KBH's style here. I'll flip over to his view. Here he is lighting it up to get this preem. He jumps from pretty far out here and kind of caught everybody else sleeping. But this is kind of the opposite of my strategy, especially on the first lap. I knew that first 5 minutes was going to be super hard. And other than that, I really wanted to get some points on each preem. But I wanted to be kind of in the middle. In the fifth was ideal for me in terms of scoring some points for the team, but every time not being out in the wind, burning matches solo. So you can see here I was actually the fastest one through that segment. Leaderboard just went away, but I came from the back and sprinted up, so I was pretty fast through that segment. And the rules on that are not super clear, which sprints the fastest time through the segment is and which one it is not. It's supposed to be 3 preems that are fastest across the line, and then 2 of those, I believe, are also fastest through the segment. Hope this was one of them because I would have picked up those points. But the fact that I don't know actually brings me to my gripe with specifically the ZRL, but Zwift Racing, e-racing in general, is no one has a heads-up native points display. Like right now, it's showing the fastest time through the Broad Street Sprint leaderboard thing behind me, but what it should be showing here is a tally of who got what points. It's really weird, and I know that some of this is what WTRL is doing, the point scoring behind the scenes, but it makes no sense to me that we can't have the computer do the scoring in real time and put the numbers up there for us to see. It would be awesome if we could be on Discord right now saying, Restart's total team points is blank number, Velocio's total team points is blank number. So here are the goals coming up. Generally, after a lot of these sprints, we're sort of, everyone's on there saying third, seventh, second, and even that is sort of a guess. You have to be watching your spot on the leaderboard on the right as you come through the banner, and you're never totally sure if that's going to line up with what's on the back end API of Zwift. But if only someone could invent a machine that was good at recording numbers and then perhaps adding them together, that would be amazing. So if someone could hook up an abacus to Zwift or something, that would be really cool. Obviously, I'm joking here, but I do really think that whatever platform can integrate native points-based racing, that'll be a game changer. And I'm glad that Zwift is doing the ZRL, that it's team-based and it's points-based, because again, like the dynamics of Zwift especially make for a race that ends up being a lot of time spent around like tempo or threshold and then a sprint at the end. But when you add points in multiple places, it makes the racing more dynamic because there are more of those sprints. It changes the tactics up, whether you're going to try to stack one particular sprint and maybe split the group or have someone attack afterward and try and drop other people, or if you're going to let other people fight for those points and then sprint at the end. But basically you just have stuff to be like thinking about and concentrating on and doing the entire race, which I think is really important. It really makes it way more engaging. So I think because that's an advantage, or that's the best sort of way to make this experience more engaging, a way that you can make e-racing even better, maybe even than real life racing, is integrating that point support for something like, if you're familiar with the Hammer series, that was a real life series that basically did this sort of format where it was team-based racing and points-based racing rather than focusing on individual riders. And the confusing thing about it for a rider in the race, I'm sure, is that they were never sure what the points were. We got a little flyer going off here, speaking of which. Interesting tactic to go this far out, but I'm going to pop my drafting boost so I can just kind of get towed. What I'm hoping here is that everyone's just going to kind of stand up and tow me. But yeah, I got the drafting boost, which lasts for a long time. So I'm going to tack onto the back of this group and just roll through solid right here. It looks like, yeah, I got pretty good position. I think I get pipped, but teammate Oliver gets by me and picks up some good points. So I am, it looks like 6th or 7th across. Again, it's like, it's hard to tell. Yeah, 7th across the line there. So you can see our times through the sprint segment there, but those are not our positions across the line. And I think that this sprint only counted for points on position across the line. So that leaderboard is sort of useless. And then it also is not providing us the context of what's going on in the race overall. And it would really help strategy and engagement, I feel like, if we knew what was going on. I'm flipping around and looking behind, and there was some attrition. This is a spot where if we were all up here and some of the Velocio guys weren't, I think we probably would have gone to the front and really started pushing the pace. But most of them were on the right side of this split. I think we were both like 4 and 4 up here, so it didn't really make sense for us to get to the front and start hammering. But that's the kind of opportunity that this points-based racing puts out there, that maybe in a normal race that would have just been sort of an innocuous regular point. That's actually the spot in the race that
picked up points.
I watched Justin Williams from, actually no, it was Corey Williams from Legion who streamed this race in the Premier League, and I watched his race back. That was actually the point that caught him out, because he wasn't trying to go for those preem points, and everyone else was. The group kind of accelerated away from him, and then coming around that 180, he lost the draft briefly, and that was it for his race. Which, again, something that if that hadn't been a points race, he probably could have just sat on the back that whole time and not had to do anything. So bad for him, but dynamic racing in general, something that's a lot more interesting than just sitting in and hanging out the whole time. Speaking of sitting in and hanging out, that's kind of what we all did until we got back around to the 23rd Street points preem for this second lap. That first lap, especially the first 5 minutes, was just so completely ballistic. I don't think anybody really had a reason to go for it, to go all in. There were no points between then and now, so skipping ahead to this point on the second lap. And once again, my strategy is to stay in the points and not burn any matches I don't have to. But at the same time, I know this is probably just going to be an all-out effort to stay in contact. It can definitely split down even farther here. It almost split down to 13 on that first lap, and now we've only got probably 1/4 of the number of riders. So the potential that this thing splits up and some of those gaps don't get filled in is even greater. I've also sort of tossed the numbers I was throwing around on the first lap. Those are kind of out the window, because after 20 minutes, as hard as we were going, what you're capable of just changes. So I pretty much knew for the first lap when I was fresh, I knew what I could do. But this lap is more about sitting with who I need to sit with and making sure I'm in the right place. So kind of the opposite thinking. I'm less paying attention to my numbers and more paying attention to the wheels around me. Again, getting a little bit of rest on that downhill because we're going right back into it on this second one here. And this is one that has no points, but probably will be the decider for what the groups are. Whoever comes together on this climb is going to be together. I went ahead and hit my drafting boost there, even though we're going up this hill, just because each of these points at the top, each of these arches has power-ups on offer, so you might as well go ahead and use them. There's a chance also that you could get a better one, like I could get rid of this drafting boost and then come out with an arrow helmet. Power-ups on a course like this where there are a ton of places to get new power-ups, my strategy is to generally use it whenever you need it. If you're coming to the next arch and you still have one, just dump it unless, again, it's the arrow helmet and you want to save that for the sprint. This is a really fast sprint on the reverse version of this course. It's a little downhill on part of the lead-in, so the speeds get really high, and an arrow helmet is a huge advantage. So if I did come across an arrow helmet, I'd probably try and hold on to that, but otherwise might as well go ahead and get rid of it. Putting in a little dig once again to move past a few of these guys and get back up into the points, and happy with that. I think I was 6th across the line, but again, who knows, because there's no heads-up points display. Got to find out later. But hitting this drafting boost so that I can go full super tuck and be totally sure I'm going to stay in this group. The drafting boost and the super tuck is always a really good combo. So it did actually split down to about the 13 riders on that climb. So it's shelled about half of that group. I think we came in with 20 or 25, something like that. So definitely a good move to try and stay in the middle because that put me on the correct side of the split and I'm not chasing. Skipping ahead to the next sprint, we've come up a huge hill and I'm still holding a drafting boost. So drafting boost lasts longer than the other power-ups, and honestly right here I just got a sniff of the line and the group speed was really low. I could see the arch and went a little too hard here, honestly. Like I should not have gone that hard that far out, but I figured since this was last one before the finish, maybe, I don't know, might be worth giving it a go. Got pipped by Ferenc there, the hockey player, actually, and then my teammate Oliver also came by me at the very last second, but that's basically a wash on points.
Yeah, there was one guy ahead of me.
The other reason I wanted to go for this sprint is I kind of anticipated that Velocio might be sending some people up the road and trying to split it right here. And looking back at their group chat, that was definitely part of the plan.
So Ted, right here will be the point. Last lap. If you counter here and bomb it, there's a chance. Yeah, you want to counter the sprint because it'll split on the sprint and then you use that as a jumping platform.
So here I am dealing with the repercussions of that strategy. It's strung out, and I'm just trying to stay in the wheels and make sure we keep chasing, but it does go single file to get to these guys here, which is pretty hard in the last few kilometers. They're really putting down a huge pace. Somewhere in here, I believe that Alex from our squad hollered on Discord that he was going to make sure it stays fast at the front, but I'm doing big numbers just to stay connected right here. These guys are kind of falling off. And so this is having an effect. I mean, it's blunting my sprint a little bit, but it's also just straight up dropping a few people. I think some of those guys did not make it back on that I just went around. And that's something you got to be really, really cognizant of when things get strung out single file like that. When the guy in front of you starts losing the wheel, you got to acknowledge that pretty quickly and get around him, or else you'll end up with a big gap to close down. And this close to the finish, that can be a big effort that you don't really have time to recover from. It just puts you in the red and you stay in the red for the rest of the race. So I believe we brought Ted back. I think we also brought KBH back here. And then we got the kind of traditional pre-sprint sit-up. Let's check back in with the Velocio Discord and see what they're saying.
Yeah. I'm reading it play by restart.
Look, he's not wrong to be nervous about that. We got a plan. We've got Linux, who is sacrificing himself in the last couple K here to keep it fast. We've got myself and Oliver that are pretty much all in for the sprint. Oliver generally goes from a little bit farther out than I do. He's really said that he wants to get a good position from 500 meters out and then go for it. And my plan is to hopefully be right on the back of whatever the group is and then really go all in from like 250, 275 meters. But nobody's going to let me keep my powder dry until we're that close. Generally from that distance, I've got a pretty good kick, but here we are looking at KBH, and he is lighting it up. It looks like another guy started to lead it out, but KBH is going all in. We got Ted King also going all in. At this point, I figure I better respond. I almost get gapped off. I wish I was in that thicker part of the group, but KBH is up here driving it. He's actually got pretty decent separation, but he starts to fade right here and gets swamped by this group that I've just tagged onto the back of. I didn't go quite early enough and can't move around these guys, but I did stick it to drag with them to the line and come in for 7th. So we've got Oliver in 3rd, me in 7th. Did beat Ted King there in 8th. So probably my only opportunity to beat Ted King at anything bike related, I would guess. Man, this effort was so hard. Really proud of how we played it, though. I think that was the smartest I could have raced from a points perspective. Consistent points throughout, good points at the end. We kept several guys in contention. I would give you the results, but they are still not posted as I edit this. But it's us and Velocio 1 and 2. And here I go dry heaving, if you're wondering how hard of an effort that was. So for more efforts like that, more edits like this, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for watching.
I just dry heaved, so. Yeah, it was too fast for me. It was too fast for too long. I don't have the top speed, I just have the acceleration. So I need it to be